and safety are obviously extremely important when you're on the trail, but especially in the backcountry, because you'll likely be several miles, if not several dozen miles away from help. So it's absolutely vital that you know how to take care of yourself and others hiking with you, and be sure that you're carrying the appropriate tools and medication to treat most injuries that may arise in the backcountry. But before we dive in, a disclaimer. I am not a medical professional, nor am I a wilderness first responder. The information in this lesson is meant to serve as guidance only, not health or life-saving advice. Okay? Okay. So let's start by talking about first aid kits. You really should never set out on any length of hike without a well-stocked first aid kit. Naturally, what is contained in a day hike first aid kit will not necessarily be the same as what should be in your backpacking first aid kit, but there will be plenty of overlap. That said, there are a few extra items you want to make sure to pack. A few of those include painkillers, adhesive bandages in several sizes, moleskin or some sort of blister treatment, alcohol wipes, antibiotic ointment, butterfly closures, burn ointment, itch relief cream and antihistamines, safety pins, gauze wrap, and a pair of nitrile gloves. Now, that's the bare minimum, but together, those things can treat most of the first aid situations that are gonna arise. As for things you don't need, I wouldn't bother with a bite or sting kit. You know, those things that claim to remove venom, because they absolutely do not work. Then there are items like tourniquet kits or splint kits for things like injuries that involve excessive bleeding and sprained or broken limbs, respectively. That's because in most cases, even experts agree that you can DIY a splint out of found materials like sticks or gear from your pack and tie it up with things like bandanas or spare clothing, which will be just as effective in an emergency situation. As for tourniquets, I never carry one for a couple of reasons. One, because tourniquets should only be used in the most life-threatening situations, like when someone is in legitimate danger of bleeding to death. That is the only time you should ever use a tourniquet. Second, because a tourniquet can be made, once again, with found materials. Grab a stick, a shirt or bandana, and make your own. That said, if packing those two items makes you feel more comfortable, then bring them. There's nothing wrong with being over-prepared, especially if you're not confident in your abilities to do it yourself. And while you may never need any of this stuff, and I hope that's the case, you should absolutely be prepared for the types of medical situations that might occur. The chief of which includes dehydration, heat illness, and hypothermia. Dehydration, not enough water, can happen quicker than you think. So can hyponatremia, too much water. And the latter is often just as life-threatening as dehydration. To combat either, make sure to eat plenty of salty snacks as you hike, especially if it's hot outside, and drink electrolytes in addition to plenty of water. That can be in the form of Gatorade, electrolyte tablets like those from Noon that you add to your water bottle or reservoir, or powdered drink mixes like brands from Scratch Labs. In a pinch, you can even just pound a few salt packets, though that isn't gonna taste as nice. Whatever you do, don't think that all you need is water to get by. Plenty of hikers with liters of water still in their bottles have had to be rescued from places like the Grand Canyon because they were hyponatremic, full of water but not enough sodium in their blood. That can lead to fatigue, weakness, nausea, confusion, even seizures, similar symptoms as dehydration. So once again, for good measure, bring plenty of salt and electrolytes in addition to water. As for hypothermia, you may be more at risk than you think, especially if you or your clothing are wet. Doubly so if you are in water. We've touched on this in the layering lesson, but again, I'll link to a science-based article I wrote about hypothermia below. But the key takeaways are this. If it's even cool out, do not stay in damp clothes, and always keep a dry set of clothing in your bag, and keep them dry as if your life depended on it, because it might. If you start shivering and can't stop, one early sign of hypothermia, get dry, find shelter, and get warm as soon as possible. Eat a hot meal, go get in your sleeping bag, do whatever you can to warm up your body again. But let's move on to talking about hygiene for a minute, which is also important on the trail. And easy. Start by ensuring your hands are always clean before you cook or eat. Easy, right? We all know how to wash our hands at this point. At camp though, that may mean breaking out a tiny bottle of soap and washing hands with soap and water. Away from natural water sources, of course. On the trail, carry a bottle of hand sanitizer or wet wipes and use them before you dig into that bag of trail mix. Because bacteria that lives on your hands can make you sick on the trail. In fact, one person who doesn't wash their hands before handling food can potentially give everyone in the group a bad case of E. coli. So when you pack your bag, don't forget hand sanitizer or wet wipes. You can also clean up the rest of your body with wet wipes. I like the kind from Ale or Ursa Major because they contain more natural ingredients, but still get the job done. Just remember that even if wipes say they're biodegradable, you should still pack them out. Don't bury them in your cat hole. But let's talk more about general safety, because this is a big one. After all, we've all heard the horror stories of people getting lost in the wilderness, cutting off their own arms with a pocket knife, being found frozen under a pile of sticks, attacked by wild animals and left for dead, etc., etc. And while these are all tragic instances, let me assure you that these are extremely rare. In fact, you are far more likely to trip and fall to your death than be attacked by any wild animal, or have to cut off your arm with a pocket knife. I'll link to a few articles I've written about various animal encounters below, but suffice it to say that you have very, very little to worry about. What you should worry about is making sure that you can be found in the event that something does go awry. Say you get lost, or you run out of food, or sprain your ankle and can't make it out on your own. This can cause a lot of trouble if you're deep in the backcountry and don't have cell service, which is common when backpacking. So the first thing you should always do when heading out on a backpacking trip or even a long day hike, especially if you're hiking alone or in a region that's new to you, is tell someone where you are going. Share your planned route and tell them when you plan to be back. Then let that person know when you return to the trailhead. That way, if they don't hear from you within a few hours of your scheduled rendezvous, they know it's time to call in search and rescue, as something may have happened. So once again, for a good measure, always, always, always tell someone where you are going and when you'll be back. There are also a variety of safety tools available. Many backpackers who hike in desolate or avalanche-prone regions often carry emergency beacons or satellite communication devices. They're expensive, but if the worst is to happen, they still have a way to call for help, even if there's no cell service or other people around. These are especially handy if you're planning on backpacking solo. You can also purchase tiny receivers from Reco Technology. Some gear even has it built in. They're little electronic chips that make you easier to locate by rescuers in the case of an emergency. Basically, if you go missing, search and rescue can use a Reco detector to emit a radio signal that bounces off of your receiver chip to help pinpoint your location. Cool, right? It's a more passive form of safety technology, but can bring a lot of peace of mind. The chips are sometimes built into jackets and backpacks, but you can also buy them separately and stick them to things like helmets, trekking poles, etc. Finally, sign up for a safety or first aid course. There are courses available for avalanche training, in-depth wilderness first responder courses, and general wilderness first aid classes. Sign up for one that suits your needs that takes place near you. At the very least, all of us could benefit from getting a CPR certification or taking a general first aid course. You may even be able to locate one at a Red Cross, REI, or NOLS outpost near you. Not only can they bring peace of mind when you head outdoors, but they could very likely save your life. Or somebody else's. At the very least, you'll know how to respond if you twist your ankle or get a paper cut. Those paper cuts in the outdoors, man. Whew, nasty. Nasty business. So stay safe out there, keep those cuts clean, and wander on.